and thank you for joining me today for this presentation on recovery after stroke. My name is Meghan Lunos, and I am an occupational therapist and certified stroke rehabilitation specialist. I work at Health Partners Neuroscience Center, where we treat people in an outpatient setting. Many of you have gone through an outpatient therapy program, might currently be participating in therapies, or maybe it's been a while and you have new goals or circumstances that would make you a great candidate. If you have not been to this facility, it is truly amazing. It is not only beautiful, but it has a lot of fun technology to utilize in therapy. And my colleagues are some of the best that you could work with. A fun fact about me is that before I was an occupational therapist, I was a potter and find that I'm able to continue to use my strength of creativity in my job as an OT. Today's talk will cover the following areas to help you or your loved one work on their skills after stroke. I will cover some of the impacts of stroke on participation, address expectations during the recovery process. We will look at the difference between compensatory techniques and recovery, look at the importance of social and leisure participation, address adaptations, including what they are and some examples of basic adaptations. We will discuss energy after stroke and how to think about it a little differently. And then lastly, provide you some resources to help along the journey. The impact on participation. A stroke affects each person differently. There can be direct effects on sensory systems, motor functions, or thinking skills, making it more challenging to move, speak, think, or experience the world. Anytime there's a shift in how the body works, it will also change how participation in an activity happens. It may make an activity like dressing more challenging or time-consuming. It also might change how much you value a certain activity, such as cooking or walking your dog. Sometimes you may want to invest more in an activity because the value has increased, and sometimes you might want to let that activity go because your values have now shifted. Expectations can be a big challenge for many reasons. Sometimes a person has never experienced a major change in health, and so understanding what therapy can do is an unknown. The term stroke might also be new vocabulary, which means understanding what recovery might look like will mean new learning. Maybe you've known someone who's had a stroke, but their experience was different. It's complicated because no two strokes are alike and no two people are alike. As therapists, we're learning who you are and working to figure out what your prior roles, routines, and activity demands were, but also trying to figure out what is important now. Once we have that partial picture, we then work together to develop achievable goals. Sometimes they are easy to come up with, and at other times they're a challenge. Sometimes it's a desire to get back to all the things prior to stroke, but nothing specific. Sometimes it's very specific, but very challenging because many things have changed and many areas were affected. Even though it might be a challenge to come up with a goal, they can be really helpful because they help to define expectations. Using a goal structure can be helpful, and one of those structures is called SMART goals. This is an acronym for what the goal should have in it. So S is it should be specific. M is that it should be able to be measured. A is that it should be achievable, or what we call the just right challenge for you. R is for relevant or important to you at this time in life. And T is for time bound, so that you know how to evaluate it. Using a format like this will help you keep energized, provide a just right challenge, and make you think about what that goal really is. This allows you to invest in it, and it also gives you direction on how to achieve it. I'm going to use an example now of how to go from a general goal to a SMART goal. So a general goal might look something like this. I want to be able to walk. It's a noteworthy goal, but very challenging to tell when it's achieved because walking is done in many different ways, in many different contexts or environments, and for different periods of time, fast and slow, both with and without assistive devices. That's a lot, and it can make it hard to know when you've achieved the goal. A SMART goal version might look something like this. I will walk 50 feet daily for 5 days in a row while holding on to my partner in order to walk down the aisle at my grandchild's wedding in 3 months. By following this structure, we make it specific, stating what I want, when I want it. We make it measurable, in this case, 50 feet, using my partner as needed. We make it achievable by considering where you are now and looking at barriers along the way, which is really helpful to do with your therapist. We make it relevant to you by including an important event, and we make it time-bound by stating in 3 months, this is what will happen. We tend to be able to move forward more easily when we have a specific destination in mind. I would encourage you to take a look at what is important to you in the next few months and see if you can create a SMART goal, and then work with someone close to you or your therapist to see what might be possible. Going through all of these changes after stroke, of course, is a challenge. The terms compensation and recovery might come up in your course of therapy, and it's nice to understand what they mean in terms of your therapy. Compensation refers to completing a task in a new or different way, whereas recovery refers to returning back to the way the task was completed before the stroke. In either case, being mindful about what your goal is, but also what your challenges are, can be really helpful. Working with a therapist can help you to understand how you should balance out the two based on your individual circumstances. Depending on what your goals are, you may be doing a bit of both, compensation and recovery. The image here shows an individual using an aid to feed herself. Something like this allows her to use her affected arm, even though it might be weak. One of the principles of neuroplasticity, or how the brain remodels itself, is called use it or lose it. In terms of stroke recovery, compensating for the weakness by using an aid is actually helping her arm to recover by using it more than if there was no aid or compensation at all. In this case, she might use her left hand or arm instead of her right. With changes to the body systems and changes in participation, we may look into using tools to assist with a task. Adaptation is the term that is used when looking at how we can change the task or how we can change the environment to allow for participation. Adaptive equipment refers to the tools that can help with this. We live in a pretty interesting time on this front. Adaptations have become more common, accepted, and with online retail and technology, you can find things with a quick search, often pull up a video on how it works and how to use it, and have it on your doorstep within a week. Depending on the task and the individual, there may be a tool or a technique to allow for participation. Sometimes that tool is very simple, such as a reacher when you can't bend down to pick something up, like our T-Rex friend here. And other times the tool is much more complex, like using a communication aid. With practice, and meeting your needs where they're at, using a tool might just be what's needed to open up a valued activity that hasn't been possible up until this point. On the next few slides, I have some examples of items that have been used with individuals recovering from stroke. I'm not affiliated with any of these companies or promoting any particular items, just noting some possibilities. So in this slide, there are adaptations for reduced hand functions. On the left, we have a cuff, which when paired with a stylus, might allow you to continue to use your hand, such as in this example. This cuff can also be used with other tools, such as a pen, pencil, or eating utensils, which can help to aid in that activity. On the right side, we have an electric nail clipper. Something like this may allow you the freedom to do the task yourself instead of asking for assistance or maybe going out to get that done. Cognitive challenges might make remembering daily tasks more difficult. On the left, we have a large pill box, which may be familiar to many of you. It's fairly simple and inexpensive, and it helps you to recognize if you took your pills on a certain date and not to take them twice. It also can help with setup, allowing a caregiver to set up 10 medications and not make errors. On the right, we have a picture of a reminder, both simple and fancy. These can help with a variety of tasks. A note on the door might help you to remember to take your wallet when you leave the house. A note on your phone might buzz you and remind you to take your medications at 1. Perhaps you're met with visual challenges. On the left, you see a stairway that has brightly colored tape, which helps you to see the edge and know where to step. On the right, these large print cards can help you to play a game with a friend. If you notice, these cards are also paired with a card holder, so if hand function is a challenge, this just might help you out. There are also many, many, many options for dressing. The photo on the left shows magnetic buttons, and the one on the right is a picture of hands-free sneakers. Each of these make the task of dressing easier, faster, and possibly can allow for greater independence. And they're also just used by many people who are not recovering from stroke. There are also interesting do-it-yourself options, or have somebody in your family do it for you. On the left, the photo shows a tennis ball, which allows for bigger grip so that you can write. On the right, there's a blueprint for 3D printed items. This one specifically is for a one-handed nail clipper. My local library in Roseville actually allows patrons to use their 3D printer, but there's also an organization that I have at the end of this presentation that will print adaptive tools for the cost of shipping, if that's something that would be helpful or engaging to you. As I've stated before, everyone that has a stroke comes from different backgrounds with interests and activities that occupied their time prior to stroke. After experiencing a stroke, life often looks and feels different. Daily routines shift, priorities change, and there's a lot of time spent in recovery working on goals, relearning skills, or adapting to new ways of life. It feels more like a job with how much time and effort is put into these activities. As with any change in life, that shift can mean a change in both social and leisure activities. Leisure and social activities are good for maintaining and improving physical health, mental health, and personal growth, but are sometimes overlooked during the recovery process because of the basic skills that need to be addressed. Of course, there can also be many limitations to participation in leisure and social activities, But there are also opportunities that many do not know about that might help to re-engage in an activity that once was loved, become part of a new group, or to even learn something new. So I'm going to share some of those with you today. In the Twin Cities, we have some amazing resources to consider. Through health partners, we have classes, groups, and activities that allow for both fitness and socialization through our NeuroWell and Inspire programs. Some of the things on this slide showcase adaptive sports. Encourage Kenny has an adaptive expo every spring, which showcases many adaptive leisure options in our community and has opportunities for team sports, individual sports, and pool classes. MinCan has a variety of aphasia groups, one of which includes a book club. The Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance also has a wealth of resources in the community that can be accessed through their resource facilitation program, which is a free program to you. It all starts with a goal, so figure out what it is that you want to do. Lastly, I would like to address energy after stroke, because all of this takes energy. In fact, taking in all of this information may have already put you in a deficit. Not everyone who has had a stroke has challenges with fatigue, but it is fairly common. The brain requires more energy than any other system in the body. And as we know, recovery from stroke is about retraining your brain. Your brain is working really hard to relearn how to do things, process what is going on, and make new connections. Basic activities that seem not to take any effort in the past now take quite a bit. It feels like you might hit a wall at some point in the day, and then things just don't function as well. If that is you or a loved one, it's often to help to think about energy in terms of a budget. Yay, budgets. The energy budget is an analogy to help you understand your energy needs. You might know what your energy budget was before the stroke and could adjust accordingly based on your activities. In this slide, the green line on the budget represents what your day prior to stroke might have looked like in terms of energy. In this case, the start of the green line is your morning, so you start with your energy fairly high. You wake up with plenty of energy, but throughout the day, you continue to spend. And by the end of the day, you're down to zero, which is fine. If you sleep well, your energy is restored, and this process will likely be repeated the next day. The red line here represents what it feels like now. It might feel like you start the day with less energy and can't make it through without crashing or getting into your penalty zone, which makes it really hard to recover. A more accurate line, however, is this red line. This one dips down faster because everything costs more, so we have inflation. Sometimes you might push through the fatigue to try to complete a task and then wind up feeling worse off, or notice that those things that were kind of clicking before don't quite click anymore. You enter your penalty zone without even knowing it, and then need a significant recovery. For many people, that might look like a nap. It gets you so far, and then you might end your day again in the penalty zone, requiring significant rest to get you back to the starting point. This is hard. So now we have the blue line, which represents the ideal. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but we'll just take this as an example. Just like with money, you can spend more than you intended and then wind up in the penalty zone. But if you pay attention to your energy and stop before you feel like you need to stop, it allows for reinvestment. And it allows you to participate in many more activities without feeling like you've crashed. This is what we refer to as pacing. One thing that might be helpful if energy is a challenge is to plan out your day. Put intentional breaks in and stick to them. When you take a break, but you have not reached your max or you're into your penalty zone, you might not need a nap. You might just need to switch gears. Try going from a physically demanding task to something that doesn't require the type of energy, or vice versa. Some options that have been helpful for others are taking 5 slow, deep breaths, staying hydrated, listening to music, stretching, talking to a loved one, watching something funny. The list is endless. So I'm going to give you the option to try one of these now. And this one is called 5-finger breathing. And it gets you 5 deep breaths without having to count or think too much about what you're doing. You'll be tracing the fingers of one hand. If you have a hand that was affected by stroke, use that hand as the one that you trace. So in this activity, you will trace up to the tip of your fingers when you breathe in, and then down to the web space when you breathe out. There is no time crunch with this. Do your best to slow down your pace, but stay with what's comfortable for you. I'm going to do this along with you. If you finish quickly, that's fine. If it takes you a little longer, that's okay too. Notice what feels good and go with it. Let's go ahead and practice. Now just sit with that for a moment and notice how you feel. Remember, there are many possibilities for breaks. You just need to find one that's right for you and invest in it. And so now we come to the end. There are many resources to help navigate your journey with stroke, so many that it can be overwhelming. And so I've listed a few here with links to follow if you're looking to dig deeper into some of the topics that were covered today. So we have our NeuroWell and Inspire programs, and that's through Health Partners. We have the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance, which is great for resource facilitation and other options and learning options. Courage Kenny Adaptive Sports. The American Stroke Association has a lot of good information, as does Stroke Engine. And then the last link is for Makers Making Change, and that's that reference to the 3D printing that I had mentioned earlier. Now I just want to say thank you for taking the time and energy to learn a little bit more about stroke and recovery, and I wish you all the best.